Welcome to the Paranormal Pendle podcast, coming to you from the heart of Pendle Witch Country in the northwest of England. My name is Craig Bryant, author, investigator and collector of stories. Join me as we take a journey into the paranormal, UFO sightings, cryptozoology and big cats. This is the Paranormal Pendle podcast. Hello and welcome to episode 17 of Paranormal Pendle, broadcasting to the Paranormal UK radio network at paukradio.com. My guest on this episode is paranormal investigator Kevin Griffiths Boden. Thanks for joining us. Really looking forward to chatting to you about the stuff that you do. Could you just start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I mean, basically, I've been into the paranormal ever since I was about 8 years old. Read books by Peter Underwood. And also one of the biggies for me was the Osborne Guide to the Supernatural World, which is quite familiar with, well, anyone maybe my age up, maybe, you know. But, you know, they had stories like Borley Rectory and vampire stories, you know. It was quite scary as a child, to be honest, with all the weird pictures that they had, but that's what got me into all this. And then basically I started investigating properly probably about 1994 on my own, just going with meeting up with people and going to different locations. And then towards the end of the 90s I joined a group for about 4 or 5 years. That's where basically I learned to be a proper investigator. And then Julian, who runs the group with me, we decided to create our own in 2004. And nearly 18 years on, we're still going strong.
So what's it called, the group?
The group's called Gannon. We basically cover, well, our main areas, Wirral, Cheshire, Merseyside and North Mid Wales. Most of our investigations around those areas, but we do, particularly lately, do venture further afield, but mainly the UK. We've never been abroad or anything like that.
No, okay. I did detect a slight twang in your accent from sort of over that way. I'm married to a Liverpool lass myself, so I did pick up the twang. You mentioned in an email that you sent me, just to sort of tell me a bit about yourself, that you're actually very skeptical about paranormal activity. Do you want to sort of go into that a little bit about how you feel? Because you said you did say that you had some theories about what causes paranormal activity, so I'm quite interested really to sort of hear what you think about that.
Yeah, I think not everyone, but quite a few people probably start off as a believer, and I'm not afraid to admit that I probably was when I got into all of this. But you know, when you a few years down the line, you start to feel that, you know, a lot of these stories that get told by people do have rational explanations. And to be honest, I think the majority of things that are reported probably have got natural explanations. It's just that very small percentage. When I say small percentage, it must be like 0.01. They're the things that, you know, that do question whether these things are paranormal or not. I am very skeptical now. I have had some experiences. I've never actually seen anything. But I haven't, although some of those experiences I've had were really interesting, still not enough to sort of convince me that there is something paranormal. You know, we've got all the different theories. I won't go through them all, but the obvious ones are spirits of the dead. There's the residual ghosts, which is like the stone tape theory. And what was the other one I was thinking? The one I actually think is that it's all in the mind. It's psychological.
Right.
I hope I'm wrong, but that's why I continue to try and prove myself.
Yeah.
You know, there is something out there, but I've got a horrible feeling it is all in the mind. But like I say, I have had experiences which do question
Okay.
my theory, but that's it in a nutshell, I would say.
Okay, well, that's really interesting. So the few experiences that you've had that have sort of questioned how you think about, you know, the paranormal in inverted commas, what sort of experiences were they then that sort of made you think that perhaps there was something more to it than you originally thought?
All audible experiences, to be honest.
Okay.
Which is, it's quite difficult to sort of prove, disprove, whatever you want to say. You know, one of the I can think of three off the top of my head. There was one, we did a huge case at a former council school in Birkenhead. It's the Brassey Street School. I know one of the first times we went there, I'd set up a camcorder, because that's what we used back then, 8mm. It might have been, what was it, 8mm? It was either 8mm or high 8, I don't know. But that's how long I'm going back. But anyway, to get back to the story, I'd left it on in what was the old school assembly hall on the first floor. Nobody in the building. I went back home, and this was prior to the evening investigation. This was. I went back, still nobody in the building, and I packed the camcorder away, basically just to see if it captured anything while there was nobody there. I packed everything away, obviously not on record now, and as I walked out of that assembly hall, I heard like a really low-key random piano playing, and it was really loud, and it you know, it did take me back a bit, and I was like, what's going on, sort of thing. But only me there, nothing recording, and that's happened so many times. Another incident at the school, I heard a female say hello, and somebody else had heard that on a previous vigil that we'd done there. But again, tape ran out. We were using tapes back then. Yeah, nightmare. Having to change tapes every 90 minutes or whatever it was. Yeah. We were forever getting stuff, but missing it. We did get some things. I did get a groan. We did have a groan that was recorded, door slams and things like that. But the interesting ones we missed. More recently, I was at Chillingham Castle in Northumberland. We've been looking to do this castle for many years. We finally got round to doing it, and we've been back every year since, about 3 or 4 years ago. And again, we were in the coaching rooms, which is in the grounds. It was separate from the castle, so we could control it better as an investigation. Because we didn't have any other guests with us or anything like that, a separate building. But anyway, we had all the rooms covered, cameras, audio recorders, and temperature loggers, you name it, everything covered. We had a few things happen, but they were all explainable, pipes, you know, windows tapping in the wind and things like that. Anyway, we packed up and got everything in the car. The other investigators were sat in the car in the car park by it. I walked back in to take the guest book back. We filled in the guest book, saying, you know, we had a nice time, blah, blah. Because it's like accommodation that you can rent. There's like apartments you can rent in the castle. And I took it back, and I can't remember if it was going in or going out. I can't remember now. I told you my memory's bad. But I was either coming or going. I heard a really massive, low male growl. Don't think it was an animal, but it was so loud, and it was definitely in the building, and there was nobody there. But again, no recording, me on my own. You know, it's always the way. But saying that, you know, these are quite good experiences for me personally. Yeah. Even though I've only got my memory to rely on, which isn't very good. But you know, it's.
So did they sort of then? How did you feel when you had these experiences then? Because you're right in saying that they are out of the ordinary. It is, you know, in my experience, it's a very small percentage of things that happen that you can't explain. And when something happens that you can't explain, then it does have quite a profound effect on you. So I'm just wondering how you felt after that, you know, given the fact that you are a healthy skeptic, shall we say, you know, somebody who you know doesn't doesn't go in for wild theories. How did you feel then when these things happened?
Well, excited, obviously, but at the same time, it's quite frustrating, really, to be honest, because I'm not a full believer. I'm not a believer at all at the moment. Still waiting to be convinced. But yeah, it's frustrating because I've honestly experienced something that I cannot explain. It's just frustrating. People when I tell the story, oh, must have been a dog nearby or something like that. But I know for a fact that noise came within the building. I know sometimes, you can go on an investigation and you do hear things. One person will say it come from the left, and the other person will say, no, I thought it came from the right. And it is different depending on the acoustics of the building. But I know for a fact it was definitely inside the building. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I
want to go back.
Yeah, I suppose that a building like that is obviously going to have a lot of echo, isn't it? So I suppose it would be difficult to sort of work out where the noise had come from, but you can definitely tell whether that it's from inside the building. It's just from what direction it's coming from, I suppose, can be quite difficult. Have any of your colleagues had any experiences then? Have any of your colleagues ever seen anything, or did they say they've ever seen anything?
Well, it's actually, I think I was going to say nobody has ever seen anything, but thinking back to we did have it. I can't tell you the story word for word, and I am going back a bit here because this was it was probably our third investigation as Gannon, or vigil, we'll say. It wasn't a full-on investigation, but we did Plas Teg, which is in Wrexham or Denbigh on the border, and myself and Julian were sat in one of the rooms on the ground floor, I believe, and he saw. I can't tell you exactly what it was because he knows what he's seen and I didn't see it, but he did see a figure in that room, and I did see something in the corner of my eye at the time. But corner of the eye things I always dismiss. But the fact he actually seen something was a bit weird. But it really shook him up, this sighting. For weeks on end, I don't know. He seemed to have some strange experiences after. I'll be honest, I was worried who I'd set the group up with, but he returned back to normal, and he's just as skeptic as me. I think he might have had more experiences than me, but yeah, I think that's probably one of the key sightings we've had. But I can't really think of anything since then. Most of the time, we'll have half a dozen things happen on every investigation, but we tend to resolve them all.
Yeah, you tend to be able to dismiss them as something natural. I mean, just going back to what your colleague saw, did he describe what he saw to you? I mean, it sounds. I mean, some people might say that perhaps something attached itself to him, or perhaps he was obviously mentally affected by it, because as you say, it sort of stayed with him for quite a while afterwards.
Yeah,
I'm just a bit sort of interested to try and get a little bit deeper into if he explained to you what it was that he saw.
I think it was a male figure. Okay. But that's all I can remember.
Right.
I'm sure he would have more details on this.
Yeah,
I think, like what you said, it does. It is as if something attached to him, or like you say, it was mental.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't really comment much on it, to be honest. That's basically all I can tell you.
Yeah, no, that's fine. One of the places that you'd investigated is somewhere that I've been fascinated with actually since I was a child, and I do remember reading a book on Lancashire ghosts. That was one of the things that, because obviously I'm from Lancashire, and that's one of the things that got me into the paranormal, and that's a place called Chingle Hall, which is very near to a place called Goosner, which is near Preston. So it's over on the Fylde coast. Sort of well, not that far from Blackpool, I suppose, really, if people don't know the area. No, I believe that now it's a private house, and the person that owns it is very sort of anti people knocking on his door and saying, I believe you've got ghosts, because it is reputedly, and it'd be interesting to get your take on this, reputedly a very haunted building, and there have been lots of sightings allegedly. But I believe you did an investigation into it a while ago. Is there anything you can remember about what happened there?
Well, yeah, I mean, I suppose Chingle Hall was probably the start of my investigation career, shall we say, to be honest. Yeah, it's got a real special place for me. And like I say, it's sadly it is privately owned now and has been for some time. Me and many more would love to go back. But as it is, we can't. But anyway, yeah, going back, it was the first time. Well, I seen Chingle Hall on a program back in. It might have been the late 1980s. It was a program called 40 Minutes Ghost Train.
Yeah,
some people may remember that, but it was a long while ago. I think there was some nurses staying at Chingle Hall, and I was obviously into the paranormal at that time, and I was, when I heard that story, I don't know, there was something about it. I was like, I've got to go. So we went to Blackpool for the day with a family trip to Blackpool, and I managed to talk my parents into stopping, either on the way or on the way back. I can't remember, one of the two. I must have been about 15. So we stopped and went round on the tour. And I went back a couple more times, and then we did our first overnight in 1994. And I kept going back, and at the beginning, like I say, I'm very much a believer. Wasn't 100% scientific at the time. There were other people there. It wasn't sort of my group or a group I was with. There was different people staying. So there were people like who said they were mediums, psychics, whatever. And there were things happen such as seances and things like that, things that we wouldn't do as a group. So it was very different back then. And things were happening, not always to me, and probably most of the time they weren't to me. People would get emotional. They would say they'd seen things. And I was like, I'm not seeing anything. But, saying that, there were some things that did happen. I do remember like the sound of latches. The flagstone in the chapel was a common thing that was experienced there. During the time I spent at Chingle, we did I joined, as I mentioned before, I joined a proper group at the end of the 90s, and during that time, which was the back end of the whole investigation, we did collate all the reports. I can't remember, it was like 2 or 3 years worth, and we so we could see what was reported where, when, what it was, which room, blah blah blah. And a lot of things were reported in the Great Hall and the chapel, and there were things like latches, the flagstone moving. Another one was the kitchen. They kept hearing like a crockery or a chinking sound, and we did manage to explain that. It was some sort of plate at the back of the fridge that every now would rattle. But it was mad how many people actually reported it as paranormal phenomena.
Yeah.
But this is what I mean. It's so many things are reported that could be explained. But for me, Chingle, were things happening? Yeah, I think they were. Were they paranormal? I'm not sure. I'd like to say yes. What I would say though, there was something about it. I've been into loads of different buildings that supposedly haunted. But you just walk into the location. Oh, nice place. Oh, this is nice. Yeah. Chingle had an atmosphere about it. Not many places have that. Chillingham Castle's another one that has a sort of similar feeling.
Mm.
So yeah, but it was, I loved Chingle Hall. I've even got a scale model of it upstairs. Yeah, I know.
Did
I
you?
didn't make it. I bought it. I bought it on an auction. But Chingle Hall is it's someplace.
Well, it is. I mean, it is a fabulous building. I can't remember off the top of my head how old it is. But I mean,
Well, I think 13th century. I think the
yeah,
building.
yeah,
Yeah.
very, very old.
Yeah.
When you were going through the reports, then did you come across any reports of visual activity? Because one of the things I always remember when I read the original story when I was back in my teenage years was that quite a few people had seen a monk, especially in the chapel area, and I was just wondering whether you'd sort of come across any reports, when you were compiling them about that sighting.
I can't remember off the top of my head, but I do believe there probably were reports of that. I've not looked at this report for some time, by the way. So
No, that's fine.
I do believe that there were some in the chapel. I know there was definitely some reported on the actual the bridge that leads into the house. I was going to say drawbridge, but obviously that's been it's been rebuilt since the drawbridge went.
Yeah.
But there was definitely quite a few sightings in there. It was a mixture of all sorts, to be honest. Chingle Hall. There's lots of different things that had been reported.
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it, that the current owner, and I can understand, if you don't believe in the paranormal at all or have any interest in it at all, I suppose that you wouldn't particularly want people knocking at your door saying, "Can we come in and have a look around because we believe your house is haunted?" I mean, you can understand people wanting privacy. So, but it's a shame. I mean, one day, hopefully, subsequent owners will allow people back in, because it's certainly a place that I'd love to go to. You mentioned actually that you'd been up my neck of the woods, Pendle Hill, recently.
That's right. Yeah, we did.
How was that?
It was more of a jolly, should we say, than an investigation. It's somewhere that we've been meaning to go since day one of Gannon almost. And we've just never got around to doing it because we've always been doing investigations. So we just decided, this was the year, we'll go up Pendle. We had to walk up the hill itself, had a look around the area, new church. And then we also drove across the moors. I can't remember the name of what it was, but it was part of the actual trail that I think the witches were taking up to Lancaster across the moors.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we did it at night. It was pitch black. It seemed like 3 or 4 hours, but it probably was nowhere near that. Probably been better if we'd gone in the day. I'm sure the views up there would have been really nice.
Yeah.
We travelled up to Lancaster as well, obviously to the castle where they were tried. And then we went up to Gallows Hill, which is I think Williamson Park now.
That's right.
Where they were the witches were hung, alleged witches, I should say.
Yeah.
Before someone corrects me. I mean, I've been to Pendle twice before with family and stuff, but never as the group. And I've been to Lancaster Castle. I've never been to Gallows. Again, one of them places when you're standing there, you start thinking about what's happened there, and it's just got real atmosphere.
It has. I mean, I visited Lancaster Castle pretty recently myself, actually, last few months, just to do some research for a book that I'm writing, because I'm fascinated by the Pendle Witches, obviously, living in the area. But I'd never actually been to Lancaster Castle myself before, and I agree. It is a really atmospheric place. I mean, obviously, part of it was a prison for a long time. It was HMP Lancaster, but no, it really is an amazing place. And again, there's a lot of paranormal activity allegedly attached to it. But unfortunately, it's not the sort of place that they allow you to do, investigations or vigils or that sort of thing. You mentioned before about you were talking about old technology, sort of old videotapes. What sort of stuff do you use now then? I assume it's all digital stuff you use now.
Absolutely. I'm not going back to tape ever again. We're pretty much digital now, even from documentation. We don't use clipboards and paper anymore. Everything's done on mobile phone, basically, more or less.
Yeah.
Well, not everything, but notes, torch, other things that can probably do sound recording. But the main things we do use are like the GoPro type cameras, with obviously with infrared lights, so the cameras can see in the dark. We also got 2 CCTV systems, again with infrared, and they've got like motion detect on it, so we don't have to always trawl through loads of footage to try and find if anything didn't happen. Audio recorders, we do use proper audio recorders as well. In the old days we did use dictation machines, then going on to mini discs, if you remember them. And then we eventually moved on to the more solid state recorders, and we put them in each room, which is great, because when something does happen, like going back to what we said, when you hear a sound, you never know where it's coming from. But with the recorders, if they're all, you can always go back to that one specific time frame and listen, and then you can work out where the sound was coming from by which was loudest. Obviously, to do that, all the audio recorders are the same model. I've got Sony ones that I use. Other investigators might use other ones as well. But we also have recorders on us. I've got it's not a state of the art, it's just a watch audio recorder. And the reason I've got that is what I said to you before. I can put it on before I start and switch it off when I get home, just in case I'm leaving a venue and I hear that growl again. It won't happen now. Now, I do. This is another thing. I do sometimes wonder if they do know that we're recording them, and they say, "Right, your recorders are off now. I'm going to make a bit of an appearance just before you go."
Yeah, just to keep you interested.
Yeah.
Do you think? Sorry, I was just going to ask. Do you think? I mean, obviously you're going into very old buildings, and I assume you're going in at night a lot of the time when it's dark. Do you think a lot of, your imagination takes over? Do you think people see and hear things because their imagination is taking over? Things are amplified because they either, they can't see as much because it's dark, so they're hearing things and it's amplified, and that sort of thing. Do you think that has a lot to do with it? Do you think it's just people's imagination, basically?
Yeah, I think with other groups as well. I didn't want to bring up TV programs, but
please do, because I know exactly who you're going to talk about, and I agree with you.
They're walking around in pitch black.
Yeah,
it's what you just said. It's we don't do that. We do have subtle lighting, or we try to have it as natural as possible. People haven't seen things when all the lights are out. People have had the lights on. Sometimes we'll have informal sessions. We'll have the lights on, we'll have a cuppa, and we'll just sit there, having a good natter. And sometimes in fact, half the time, things will happen when you least expect it, which is why we have a bit of a combination of informal investigations and formal. I prefer formal, but we have to do a mixture of both because of what's happened in the past. Have I gone off subject, or what was the original question?
No, just about, it was just about your imagination, people's imagination running riot because obviously if you, I mean, we've got five senses, haven't we? Well, we've got scientifically
Five that we know of.
Yeah, we've got five senses scientifically that we know of. Other people will say there's a sixth sense, or some people say they will go into a building and they'll be able to pick up paranormal activity or a feeling of paranormal activity, or they'll be able to pick up they'll be able to feel electrical charges and that sort of thing. But I mean, we know that if, let's say, for instance, somebody has sight problems, then the hearing tends to become more acute. So what I'm trying to get at is if you're doing an investigation and you're in a, let's say you're in Chingle Hall, it's the middle of the night, you've been told it's haunted, you've been told there's ghosts, there's bangings, there's rappings, there's knockings, there's moanings, there's all this sort of thing. That's what you're expecting. And it's dark and you can't really see what's going on. Any slight sound that you're going to hear, and of course these buildings are old buildings, so they're going to creak, they're going to groan, they're going to settle, as old buildings do. People hear something, is it going to be amplified, and are they going to think it's something that it isn't? Is that where a lot of this comes from, do you think, from your experience?
I would say so, yes. I think no end of times if people find out what I do. I've been told a lot of times about people seeing ghosts at the end of the bed, which could be, it's dark, they've just woken up, they've just had a dream, they're still dreaming, sleep paralysis, and being in the dark, people imaginations will can run wild. And other groups that investigate, if you're investigating till 6 a.m, I know for a fact that people start falling asleep after 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
It's just natural.
Of course.
So people, are tired, and they are going to hear things, and like you say, amplify things, what have happened, something that was quite a minor event. It just depends on the person, I think.
Yeah. Do you get other investigation groups then that are quite sort of not openly hostile to you, but because of the way that you investigate things in a different way, in a more logical way, shall we say, and a much more scientific way, and a much more open-minded to things being able to be explained away, rather than just because there's a bang it has to be a ghost? Do you tend to find then that people from other investigation groups can be a little bit sort of how's the best way to put it, a bit anti towards you? Do you know what I mean? Bit sort of maybe a little bit hostile.
Maybe. I'll be honest, we don't tend to meet up at paranormal groups often. And I don't know how many groups do know of us, because we're quite a private group. We don't put things out on YouTube or sell tickets, and we're not an entertainment group.
No.
I would imagine if we did, we did do not a joint investigation. We did one a few years ago in Wrexham, and there was another group there, and they had mediums, and they were really shocked that we didn't have one.
Right.
They couldn't understand why we didn't use mediums, and it's never have done.
What's your view on mediums then?
I'd like to believe them. I think if there are such things as mediums, there's a very small percentage of decent ones.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fake stuff going out there.
Of course, yeah.
I'm not saying all mediums are, but there certainly are a lot of them. Especially, since it's become more popular on TV back in the early 2000s. It's
Yeah, it's sort of it's diluted it, hasn't it? It's turned it into an entertainment thing rather
Yeah,
than a scientific.
yeah.
Um,
I would like to believe that, you know, that there are such people that can sort of tune in.
hmm.
Um, but I think unless you can do it yourself, there's no way you're going to prove to others that what they're telling you um, is the truth.
Yeah,
It's a difficult one, really.
I suppose unless you experience it yourself, it's then quite difficult to understand how somebody else can experience
Yeah,
it. I suppose that's probably better because I agree. You know, I mean, I try not to watch stuff on YouTube and because I just get really angry. I really
yeah,
do, because I mean, I do believe in the paranormal. I do believe I have seen things. But a lot of the stuff that's out there is for entertainment purposes and for nothing else. And we all know where it all started, and it was a very popular, very successful TV show that
yeah,
started it all off. And obviously now with social media and everything else, it's. I was quite shocked when I started doing this with the number of people out there that are, that pretend to be paranormal experts, whether it be Twitter, whether it be Facebook, whether it be YouTube. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands, probably millions, if you go
yeah.
all the way around the world.
Too many.
And it is actually really refreshing to talk to somebody like yourself because you're approaching it from a completely rational angle. And I think that's good and that's really interesting. I mean, do you have a Facebook group or anything like that? Do you have an online presence at all, or do you just not bother with it?
Oh yeah, yeah. We've actually got a website because a lot of groups don't have websites anymore because they basically rely on social media.
Yeah.
But we always put our main, report summaries and things on a website. We've also got a Facebook page which we do sort of put things on once or twice a month, photos of where we've been and what we're doing and experiments we may be doing.
Yeah.
And all our pretty pictures are posted on Instagram. And then one of our investigators, Nikki, is the master of who's put the website and the Instagram together for us. So yeah, so we do have some presence. I think we've got one video on our YouTube channel. And I don't know if you want me to talk about that or not.
No, of course, yeah. I was just going to ask you before you do that. What's your website address, and then folk can have a look at it if they want to.
Yeah, sure. It's gannon.org.uk, and that's spelled GHANON.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that's fine. Okay. So yeah, go on then. The video. You're going to mention the video.
Yeah. Again, I can't give you the proper technical details because the person who came up with the possible explanation isn't here. But we were up on the Great Orme some years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago.
That's Landudno, isn't it, for people that?
That's right. Yeah, yeah. I can't remember why we went now, but we were up there with cameras and stuff, and we seen like a light at the top of the cemetery, and we actually caught it on camera. It was, I didn't see it at the time, but 2 people did, and then they were like, "Oh, did you see that?" And yeah, it's like a flashing light. So obviously, being skeptic, we tried to debunk it as much as we could. We tried to sort of see if it was lights reflecting from cars coming up and things like that. And we couldn't sort of work it out. But one of our investigators, John, came up with a really good explanation, which I can't tell you. But it was something to do with the granite.
Okay.
Do you know what? I wish I could remember now, but I can't. But he came up with a real good explanation of what it could have been. And do you know what? I can't remember.
Was it something to do with the geology then, or sort of like marsh gas, or maybe something like that? Because,
possibly,
yeah.
I can't remember now. But it was a really weird explanation. But quite plausible.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's interesting. I'll have a look at that. So your YouTube again is just is it just Gammon? Just search for Gammon, and it should be a YouTube channel.
You can, yeah, you can try. We don't really use it, so I can't even remember the URL for it or anything. So
no, well, I'm sure if anybody wants to search for it on YouTube or just Google it, it'll probably pop up. But that sounds real. That does sound really interesting, actually. What investigations have you got ongoing at the minute? Then have you got anything coming up that you're particularly looking forward to?
Yeah, I mean, we've as I said, we do quite a lot of different investigations, different venues. Unfortunately, we haven't sort of got one that we go to every month, sort of thing. Which, like the school, that was quite a regular venue for us back then. But at the moment, we're sort of doing various venues, but there are some that we are returning to, and particularly coming back. Chillingham Castle is one of them. We're going back there next year. It's quite a long way to go. It's about a 4-hour drive. So
whereabouts is it? Chillingham Castle,
Northumberland.
Oh, yeah.
So it's quite a drive. So we generally only do that once or twice a year, but we've only just started doing that in the last 3 to 4 years. I think that's probably our most exciting venue that we've got. We have also recently done Madeley Court in Telford. Okay. They've had a number of things reported. It's a hotel, and basically we're obviously based in some of the rooms that have reported activity. But there's been quite a few things reported there, particularly in I think it's room 11. People being pinned down on the bed and being woken up in the night and things. There's been a figure seen by the dining hall. Cleaners won't go in the gatehouse rooms. And there's also I can't remember the name of the building, but it's there's a meeting place that you have for meetings, which is a separate building to the actual hotel. And there's been quite like poltergeist type activity reported in there. There's quite a few things that have happened, and we've this year we did 2 overnight investigations there, and we spent a good, it might have been almost 24 hours at both of these. Hammered it with equipment, etc. Absolutely zilch, unfortunately.
I was just going to say, did you actually pick anything up?
No, we did have something on one of the audio recorders, but it was just an ad hoc recording on a mobile phone. But sadly, I think we sort of worked out. I can't remember what the sound was, but it was at the end of the recording, and I think something's been knocked as it's been switched off. Because they said at the time they never heard it, but it sounded interesting, but
yeah,
it led to nothing. We've been going to Rowton Moor a few times. Rowton Moor is an old battlefield from the Civil War on the outskirts of Chester. Have been some reported activity there. I think there's one of the soldiers on a horseback has been seen, and music's been heard in the fields. There's not much more I can tell you about that. The reason we have been going there because it's on our doorstep, and the reason why we started doing it is because we've been going to Marston Moor a lot as well. That's a venue that's in Yorkshire.
Yeah. Again,
it's another Civil War battlefield. There's probably been more things reported there, but again, it's just distance with the travelling. But there's been quite a lot of things reported there, and again, that's another location that just has a feeling about it. I don't think Rowton does, but Marston Moor certainly does. I don't know why, because they're both similar. They're just fields, basically.
Yeah.
But Rowton Moor's on our doorstep, so it's somewhere we can go. We did 2 or 3 years ago. A couple of investigators thought they heard like clip-clopping sounds. But it's a difficult location for audible reports because I can't remember which. There's basically a busy road at the end of the fields, and the sound really travels across. So it's going to be very difficult to sort of pin down any real audio evidence there.
Yeah, it could be sound traveling from the road or anything, then, couldn't it? Really?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's another interesting venue. We did a bus stop. Yeah, a haunted bus stop. Probably one of the weirdest locations we've ever done.
I'm intrigued by this one.
Yeah. I'm not sure if we've done it this year. I think we did a couple last year, but we followed up a story that had been reported in the local news to on the Wirral. And it seemed such a crazy story, but there's been reports there going back years, apparently. And people have had their hats pushed off as they're going past the bus stop. A cyclist, I think, went past, he had his hat tipped off. Could have been the wind.
Yeah.
You never know. Bags being pulled off the shoulders. There's been a few weird things like that. I think someone actually seen an arm protruding from the actual bus shelter, which is probably the most bizarre thing. But sometimes, like a lot of things, stories get exaggerated. But I'm sort of like interested sometimes to think, well, maybe there might be something in this.
Yeah.
So,
can I just ask what whereabouts it was, that, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, sure. It's the one outside Rake Lane Cemetery.
Okay. Right. I do know the Wirral a little bit because my wife's family were over there, but I don't know that area. So I just wondered whether it might have been somewhere where I'd been through or I knew, but no, I've heard sort of stories of disembodied body parts suddenly appearing in thin air before. So yeah, it's a strange one, that. So what did you go there? Did you? I assume you didn't see any floating arms, otherwise. No,
absolutely not. But it was an example of a daytime vigil. I know you were talking about that most investigations take place at night, but that one was actually we did that early morning, basically because it was quieter at that time. But we've done quite a few day vigils at places. I think the school that we investigated in Birkenhead before it was demolished, they'd had quite a few reports of things during the daytime. So they are better because it's easy to stay awake, I guess.
Yeah.
And plus it's light.
Yeah.
But yeah,
you're not then being deprived of one or more senses, are you? When it's like you're aware of everything that's going on, and so, as we were talking about earlier, you're not going to get this sort of heightened. If there's a bang somewhere, it's going to be heightened because you're in the dark, sort of thing. So I think if more people did daytime investigations, I think I'd be a little bit more convinced if anything happened, rather than sort of nighttime investigation, because they're always at nighttime, aren't they? The people they're always in the pitch black, as you said. So it's refreshing, actually, that you're doing it the other way around. You're doing daytime investigations. And
well, you go when things have been reported. That's the key time to do it, because if they've reported it 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there's no point in going at 3 o'clock in the morning.
No, of course not.
No. And I think the good thing with not to boast our group, but I think the investigators we've got, we trust each other so much. If something does happen, we believe each other.
Yeah.
We're quite a tight-knit group, because we're only small. We've only got 11, 12 members. And a lot of those people have been in the group for some years now. So, we sort of know each other.
Yeah. There's an element of trust there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, and that's probably why nothing happens. That's the reality, though. The reality of investigating. I always quote this to people as well. I can't remember which book it was in, but it was definitely a Peter Underwood book. And I remember him saying that waiting for a ghost is like waiting at an airport for a plane to crash. That's how often things happen.
Yeah.
And it's not every 5 minutes like you see on the telly. No. Can I swear?
Of course you can.
It's bullshit.
No, I agree, because you know, ghosts, if they exist, and as I said, personally, I think they do, but they don't perform to order. You know, just because you've got a group of 10 people who have all paid 50 quid a piece to stay over in an old hotel overnight doesn't mean to say that all the ghosts are going to come out and they're all going to make themselves known and everybody's going to see a ghost. You know, that's just not the way that it works. One final question then. If you could go anywhere and do an investigation, where would you like to go?
Back in time.
Okay.
Can I go back in time?
You can, yeah. Anytime, any place. Go on.
It's got to be the venue of all venues. That's Borley Rectory in Essex.
Yeah.
I would love to have been a volunteer, staying there for weeks on end. Because even again, I've read the book, a few books on Borley Rectory, and although it was one of the most haunted, alleged most haunted buildings in England ever, there were weeks that passed when nothing happened, and then something major would happen. Yeah. So it wasn't all like something happening every day, or so I believe. But over a period of time, they collated a lot of evidence, and that's investigative. I mean, whether some of it was fabricated, that's debatable.
Yeah.
But you know, yeah, it's got to be Borley. I mean, Chingle Hall's probably second, but
well, yeah, it's funny because actually, when I was thinking about obviously what we were going to chat about, and you mentioned Chingle Hall, I've always sort of thought of Chingle Hall as probably the most, in inverted commas, haunted building in Britain, and yet people would say that it was Borley Rectory. So it's interesting that you brought that up. I think it's a sort of, you know, it'd be like the FA Cup final of haunted buildings, wouldn't it? Borley Rectory versus Chingle Hall. I think they're both probably on a par with, you know, alleged paranormal activity. So yeah, no, I agree. I think Borley Rectory would have been a really fascinating place to investigate, and it's a pity that, you know, it's no longer there. Well, I have to say that it's been really interesting talking to you, Kev. It's been great to talk to somebody with a different view on things, because normally when you talk to people about the paranormal, they are absolutely 100% convinced that ghosts exists. You know, they've done investigations where loads of things have happened, and I think talking to you, it's obvious that 99.9 times out of 100, nothing happens. Things that do happen, most of the time you can sort of, you know, come up with a reasonable explanation why they've happened. If you did see a ghost, how would that really change your mind, or would you still be looking for some reason for seeing it?
That's a very difficult one to answer. Very difficult one to answer. I mean, that would be very questionable. Yeah, I don't know. I can't answer. I don't think I will see one, to be honest, but
you never know.
You never know. Again,
investigating, haven't you? Otherwise, you'll.
That's it. The more times you do it, the more chance of that happening.
Well, I wish you all the luck. You never know. It will be a life-changing experience, and if you do, I expect an email, and we'll have you can tell me all about it, because
I'll be telling the whole world if I ever see anything.
It's been great talking to you, Kev. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, Craig. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been great. And again, if people just look online for Gannon, Ghanon, they'll be able to find your website and your Facebook page as well, which I think I found just by doing a search. And I did join it. I think I joined it anyway. I'm sure I did. Double check. If I didn't, I will do. And I'll have a look at and see what's on there. Thanks again. It's been brilliant. Been a pleasure to talk to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Craig.
No worries. Thank you to Kevin for talking to us on this episode, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I think it's certainly refreshing to talk to somebody who has a different outlook on paranormal investigation. Remember, you can check out my website, which is www.craigbryant.co.uk. And remember, as the nights are now drawing in, keep watching the shadows.